Hello friends and welcome to my channel. Last year I made a pair of winter boots for myself. This year I decided to make a pair for my daughter, who luckily has the same shoe size as I. This is important as I have to be able to use the same shoe lasts. I bought this lovely red wool to use for the uppers. Otherwise I'm using mostly recycled fabrics and leftovers from my old projects. The warmth is created with several layers of wool. I decided to cut up these two old coats for that. This requires a surprising amount of fabric, as if I want to have 3 insulating layers, I have to cut the pattern piece 12 times. This hood is too small for the insulating layers, but I'll find some use for it later. I think you have seen this red flannel before. Once more, it is used for the lining. I cut the tongue the same way as the uppers. After some thought, I decided to sew the tongue into a pocket and then slip the insulating layers inside. I zigzagged the insulating layers together and now I can slip them in. I then stitch around the tongue to fasten all the layers together. This is a perfect opportunity to use a decorative stitches oma Husqvarna. The toe, the heel and the lacing holes are interfaced with sturdy canvas. The toe and the heel parts are reinforced by stitching around the pieces. Now I can baste all the layers together. The interfacing pieces go first and then the insulating wool layers. I stitched the back heel seam very close to the interfacing layers. Then I open the seam and top stitch around the seam. The lining gets the same treatment. Now I can sew the lining and the uppers together. Yes, I sew in my pajamas. I leave the top open for the moment. Why did I leave the top open? Well, I was looking at this hood with the faux fur trim and decided that the faux fur trim would make a perfect decoration for the top edge. I cut the faux fur trim in half, finished the cut edge and then sewed the trim to the boots. I think this looks very nice. Now I top stitch the seam from toe to toe. Next, I fasten the heel interfacing with some decorative top stitching. Then I fasten the interfacing strip at the lacing holes. This little curve at the toe fastens the toe interfacing pieces in place. Safety first. I'm sewing little stars of reflective fabric on both boots. I will later turn these stars into snowflakes. Then it's time for more top stitching to fasten all the insulating layers. This doesn't need to be boring, so I sketched some fancy swirls. To make the stitching more visible, I'm using the reinforced straight stitch that sews back and forth. Now, to make the sole, I'll take the pattern from last using painter's tape. pattern. I first cut the pattern out of Texan board. You can buy Texan from Etsy from shops that sell shoemaking supplies. This makes a sturdier boot than wool that I used in my last pair of winter boots. I'm covering the Texan soles with recycled wool that I stitched in place by hand. As I was hand stitching, I continued sewing the toe seams from my uppers. I'm using a ladder stitch but making a back stitch here and there to tighten the seam. Then I sew the tongue in place. Here is the finished insole. I now staple this to the bottom of my last one. Now let's add the upper. I use a few pins to pin the upper in place. Now I stitch the insole in place. At this point, it is important to remember to take out the staples, otherwise my shoe would be stuck to the last. Now I sew the edges of the upper to the insole. I cut away some bulk. I fill the cap in the middle with some wool scraps. I bought these soles from Etsy. I'll put a link to the shop down in the description. These soles are a bit snug, so I heat them up with a heat gun and then gently stretch the edges outward. I use a piece of scrap wool so that I don't burn my fingers. Now the sole fits much better. Now the stinky business. This contact cement stinks, so I'm doing the gluing under the kitchen fan. Still, the whole house stank afterwards. However, I've tried the solvent-free glue for shoemaking and that didn't work at all. I spread the glue all over the soles and the bottom of the shoe. Then I leave them to settle for about 20 minutes. Then I added more glue and waited again. Now most of the solvent has evaporated. I heat up the glue a bit and then it's time to fasten the soles. I found it easiest to put the shoe on and then step onto the sole. Well, it would have been easier to add the lacing holes before the shoe was sewn together, but I didn't think about that. I could also have made my life easier and cut away a part of the insulation from the lacing hole area. Now the fun part. I'll now embroider snowflakes and ice flowers with white embroidery floss. And here are the finished boots. Thank you for watching. Please do me a favor and click like and subscribe. See you soon in another video. Bye!